So grouping both Manuel and Mike's question together, they ask how NATO would or should position itself in the possible event of an attack on Taiwan from China. And do you think that Xi Jinping is being so aggressive to deflect concern from internal political problems?
Oh, yeah, those are really good questions. You may have seen The Economist this week has a very good analytical piece on all of this. Yeah, I mean, if you ask most American strategists, where's the next war coming from? They will say China will try to take back Taiwan. It's dealt with Tibet, it's dealt with the Uyghurs, it's recently dealt with Hong Kong. Through the national security law, taking advantage of the COVID crisis, but and that's been, at least in its own eyes, in clamping down on the opposition, successful. So what's left at Taiwan? Now, Taiwan, of course, is more difficult, but Taiwan is in a weak legal position because so few countries recognize it. It doesn't have a formal military alliance with the United States, just a weapons support agreement. And of course, China is so much more militarily powerful. So if Xi, does show an appetite for risk taking in the way that Putin is showing an appetite for risk taking, and particularly if Putin is keeping the West occupied, if they do this in a coordinated way by Putin keeping us busy, with troops in Ukraine and all of that, while the Chinese do a grab for Taiwan. Then the Chinese feel that they could potentially get away with it. They know that they would pay a very, very stiff price, but they see that with Russia having occupied a great portion of Georgia and Ukraine, it too has paid a price, but it's been able to ride out sanctions over a period of time while not giving up any of the territory that it's acquired. So what's the answer? Well, of course, the answer is that the United States has got to make a Chinese invasion of Taiwan as costly as possible, and that's the direction the US is going in by freeing up the export legislation so that Taiwan could get F-35s. And, this upset the Chinese big time, but the Americans have decided, forget it. It's more important to give the Chinese most modern military weapons, even if Beijing doesn't like it. Secondly, to try to, in advance, spell out to Beijing, as we've been trying to do with the Russians, such a massive packet of sanctions, like with Russia, we're going to cancel the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, we're going to take you out of the SWIFT banking clearance system. Do you really want to do it? So to try to put in place a kind of anticipatory deterrence by spelling out in advance all of the consequences in a way that makes the Chinese think again. The Chinese are rehearsing the invasion of Taiwan using Hainan Island. So they're certainly, getting themselves into the posture that they could do it. But whether they're really doing this to make the Taiwanese back down, they've recently re-elected a pro-independence president and try to get Taiwanese politics to, go back to the Kuomintang, the original nationalist movement, but which has become more pro-Beijing in recent years. So Taiwan goes back to being, very docile sort of self while retaining a degree of autonomy. That's what they're seeking to do through military pressure, like Russia is trying to get Ukraine, to stop trying to move towards the West by rattling the saber. Or whether they really want to reoccupy it, we don't know. But I tend to be rather gloomy on Taiwan, because I think so far, the lesson of the Chinese, particularly on Hong Kong, where they were not prepared to allow one nation, two systems to operate. The Taiwanese have taken also the conclusion that the Chinese are not allowing one nation, two systems to operate. But whether they will be able to increase their defense in a way that makes it too risky for China to attack is a case in point. But the most important thing for the West is, unlike with Crimea in 2014, not to be caught by surprise, not to be caught napping. I think NATO showed, if I can say so, over the last couple of days in dealing with the Russian build-up on Ukraine, that by getting to it early, knowing what's happening, doing a load of different things, sending a load of signals, you could ultimately persuade the Russians to back down. And I think, not having an intelligence failure over Taiwan, waking up one morning to be taken by surprise and seeing the People's Liberation Army parading down the Central Boulevard in Taipei, that is going to be the most important thing. So I don't have a really good answer for you, but I think, in terms of major conflicts, that is by far the one that all of the experts are pointing to at the moment.